historically, people usually are afraid of the changes. I mean, if you take a look, for example, at the movements in England, Luddites in the past, there were like a bunch of people who were opposed against of the certain types of cost-saving machinery. It was in 19th century. And this movement was pretty strong. People were pretty much scared that a machinery gonna replace high-skilled workers at that moment of time. And of course, manufacturers were super happy to do it because, I mean, easy to put machine, which gonna do the same all the time, then pay for each worker who is standing and have own opinion, needs more money, for example, you need to compensate inflation and things like that. So there is a lot of things you need to do when you have employee. And machine, you just need either electricity or technician who gonna maintain it. That was in England in 19th century. And well, as you see, a lot of similar things appearing right now, slightly different directions, but the idea behind the same. And basically the Luddites, their organization was pretty strong. Like if you take a look at the current realities, of course the let's say big war they kind of lost, so you still see already there is available like machinery, like everything is available, everything is automated or as much as possible. But they made a very strong ground for making, let's say, unification of the employees, and they also managed to reconsider some wages. But at the end, still, manufacturers managed even to push like through the laws or the regulations that you cannot burn the machinery, for example, and things like that. So yes, Luddites movement was pretty strong, but at the end, as you see, they still achieved some goals, but at the end machinery have appeared. We have right now also neo-Luddites, so people who usually against of the new technologies, new automations and things like that. This is also pretty much the same approach, same mindset. It makes sense under certain limits. But I would tell that, yeah, as history shows, the automations under certain regulations always make sense. In most cases, they make sense. So that is how it goes. And of course, yes, in most cases, automations mean that generic things are made by machinery, and the requirements to skill of the people who working with the machinery on the one side dropping down, so people who, for example, utilizing the machinery, their skill might be lower because then you don't need to have that broad knowledge. On the other side, it might require much higher skilled people who working with that and who have understanding how machine works to be able to maintain it, support and develop. So kind of as you see on the one side, we lose the amount of people who are needed for particular workloads. On the other side, we have increasing demand for also like small groups of people who can handle it, and a lot of also like workload around this industry. So as you see, this is how it usually goes in the history. And yeah, as you see, current trends are pretty much the same. So like we have kind of industrialization like it was in the 19th century, but now it's appearing with the machine learning and with generative AI. So progress moves, things are moving further. So what's next? Yeah, I have mentioned already good things about the machine learning, that it can solve a lot of things. I also mentioned pretty bad thing that it's super hard to train it if you want to have your own model. Yeah, but what else is bad? What are the other issues? So first of all is on the one side you need to think about that security topic. It sounds very easy. Yeah, you need to feed a lot of information to the machine, it will understand it, and then you will get meaningful outputs. But why I was talking quite a lot about, let's say, training own models or private models, so things which are not in the cloud. Problem is that bigger model becomes, it's harder to control and you're losing the transparency. What is happening behind the scene of this machine? So like why it makes particular decisions, why it makes particular outputs for you. This is the first thing. Second thing is like as soon as you feed more and more information to the system, and if it's a public system, it might happen that you are feeding into this machine, for example, corporate secrets, things which are under non-disclosure agreements. Maybe you are feeding their information which is under copyright regulations. Like, for example, from some manufacturers, they bring you some documentation and you, to make your life easier, you just feed in information to the machine. And yeah, if it's a public, it might appear that your data will, let's say, reappear in some other companies, including your corporate secrets, including your private data, and things like that. If you think that it's impossible, just Google. There are already cases available when one company was, let's say, feeding information internally into the model, and then another company managed to extract it, and then there were even posts about that. Just search for that. I'm a little bit lazy to find out what is the exact case, but there were some issues in the Taiwan manufacturers, in the Chinese manufacturers as well, so you can find out a bunch that if person who searches will find out. Yeah. So this is the first thing, security and data protection. Of course, you can hear a lot also about the medical industry, because medical industry is also pretty much interesting, and there's really huge potential here. You can imagine, for example, you can, I don't know, take a lot of photos of cancer and then feed it to the machine. And then, like, instead of making person to recheck every particular image, machine can actually check it more precisely under some limits. And it might say that maybe here some kind of difference or look suspicious. More images you feed into the system, smarter it becomes. Yes. But what if there is information about patient? I mean, for example, you need information about patient to also like be able to connect some dots together and find out what are the common grounds why, for example, disease appear or which factors could trigger it, and then find out the intersections between different patient to be able to make analytic on the top. Well, generative AI models, they can do it, but here you come again to the same problem. The patient information is private, and again, here's the thing, you can't use public models for that. So here is again topic with the privacy of the data. Another topic which I mentioned already, that it's very hard to explain the data and to understand why the output is like that. Then, of course, another thing is that the systems tend to have a bias. After some time, sometimes bias is hidden, so like it might be pretty much hard to understand what is happening and why you start to get some kind of false or incorrect or partially correct answers on the one side. On the other side, sometimes systems start to like hallucinate like crazy. Plus, if you use, for example, public, let's say, available models, they also tend to be vulnerable against of the attacks, and there's already available some attacks through the prompting, for example, through the training, so you can retrain model to something strange. Let's assume you have best ever model, and this model was, I don't know, aggressively trained, for example, to become more racist, yeah? And it will become more racist. I think there already even were some researches about that, so you can also find it out. So yeah, as you see, there is like, it's a new Wild West. There is a lot of things happening here and there, and now somehow it needs to be regulated. And it will be regulated, because there is already countries, they are working on the regulation and making the law framework for that. What does it mean? At the end, most probably price will start to increase even more for the tokens, because at the end, companies don't want to bear the cost on their own. For example, copyright issues. Sometimes you need to pay a license for the data which you are using for training your model. Because right now, as soon as I mentioned, it's a Wild West. Like some companies were just taking the data, like feed the whole internet, let's call it like that, into the system, and then they get something into the output. Technically, after law is released, I think it's going to be next year in 2025, it will not be that easy. There will be, of course, a lot of gaps still in the regulations as usual, but like year after year it will become more and more stricter, more precise, and at some point it will be already much harder to bypass it, which means that the end price for the trained new models will start to increase more and more. That's potential things which I see. On the other side, still, it's a future. It knocks into the door and you have no choice. At some point you will have to open the door. Earlier you do it, better you understand what is there. Later you do, harder to catch up like what you have missed. Thoughts about the future? Well, what I can foresee within next maybe 5-10 years, I most probably, as I was mentioning like before, there could be decreased in demand in some professions which possible to automate, and on the other side there could be increase in demand in very, very narrow fields with very, let's say, high skilled people who can manage the systems. So of course the generic, let's say, easy to automate positions will either get lower wages, or maybe will even like just really drop in amount of let's say open positions in general in the market. But on the other side it will definitely open new opportunities, like as you see in the 19th century with the automating and industrialization of the manufacture in the textile industry. So on the one side there will be reduction of the easy to automate, on the other side there will be new demand in other positions. What might it bring? Whereas I'm a little bit afraid of, or let's see how it's gonna roll out, but as I mentioned, will be demand on high, let's say, skilled positions. On the other side, well, when person leaves the university or high school, or in general just learning, person might be, let's say, leaving the university with a very good background, with a very good theoretical knowledge. So like theory is one thing, but practice is something else. And sometimes there are some kind of, you need to just to like pass and like gain experience. But how to gain experience if, for example, machine just takes the simple tasks from you and does it, and then there's already demand that someone needs to be like on this level and you are on this level. This level is done by machine. How to pass this gap, how to jump to the next layer? Well, this might exactly increase the competition on the market for maybe even for some areas with software engineering, so on. So for example, what I can imagine, which positions might suffer out of it. Some kind of, let's say, easy positions with like simple copyright, like when people are writing some text based on another text or something like that. And definitely this one might be harmed. Then some, let's say, positions when people, I don't know, like making simple forms, programming very simple sites. Well, in this case, most probably, yes, they're also going to be harmed because, I mean, machine technically will be able to do it. So it will be harder to close this gap between like you don't know and you don't have enough experience, and you have already enough experience, so you can bypass the machine. Let's see. So on the one side, it might make market a little bit more competitive. On the other side, it also most probably will open new horizons. Plus, well, universities, high schools, they also do not, let's say, hold on. They just gonna check, and most probably they will adopt their programs of the education. So, I mean, new students most probably would be already not on that level, but on that level. But yeah, in this case might happen that education will be already more critical. For example, in the like computer science education might be more critical, might be a little bit harder to jump into the software engineering, yeah, because simple things will be done by machines. So that's theoretical thoughts how it might look like in the next future, within some years. Of course, we'll see how regulations in the law will be, let's say, appearing. So threat could be exactly for people who are doing, let's say, things which relatively easy to automate already right now. They of course will be harmed by generative AI or by hybrid AIs, which are like really jumping right now, and they are learning exponentially quickly. So they're already pretty good even in the writing source code or programming code. There's already models available which, for example, generates the code, then feeds into another, let's say a model tries, it doesn't work, retry again, so like reprompting, so model reprompting itself or another model. So there is like kind of already like a lot of creativity happening how to use the system, like how to handle it. But yeah, as you see, at some point early you start with that. Probably better, because especially if you feel that maybe your position can be automated, yeah, then better to give a try with that and take a look. Because when you start from beginning, right now it's as soon as it's a wild west at this moment, you can try different things and take a look how it works, where you can benefit out of it to free your mind and to benefit at the end from the system. Which threat could be and which trend it might build. A little bit, one of the might scary one is, I know like a bunch of companies who are, let's say, trying to get better margins. I mean, like for example, I don't know, they produce, I don't know, software, or they're doing something, I don't know, texts or like whatever, news maybe, I don't know. And some companies who try to increase their margins, of course, they can try to use the model to produce for them something and fire up the people. So like might be, let's say, increasing amount or decreasing amount of the human resources and put effort into the machines. If you ask me, potentially it's gonna lead in the mid and long term to pretty much bad state for this company, but in the short term, most probably this company will get bigger margin and get more money. Why in mid and long term, I assume it might not work that well. The thing is, as I mentioned, models tend to have a bias and hallucinations, and you always need to work with that to make it working. Plus, human brain is something what is, I would tell, sometimes pretty much creative. So like still, doesn't matter how adoptable model, in some cases human brain is still gonna be much more reactive, and it will let's say find out the solution much faster than any of the models, and it might be like much easier and cheaper actually for the company to get to, let's say, in different direction. But if you, for example, fire 90% of your human resources in the company and use instead of that machine, then you might be trapped into the situation when, well, you use the model, this model is used by another, let's say, a few hundred thousands of companies maybe across the world. You are not different anyhow from them, and to make something different you need, again, human. So this can be kind of a trap. Let's see how, of course, it's gonna, let's say, roll out, because model also becomes smarter. On the other side, I still expect regulations in the law. This might be interesting, let's say, to take a look how it's gonna roll out in the future. But still consider, there will be new horizons, like for all of us, including for the companies. And don't be afraid of this change. You can already see, there's a lot of the companies already like writing like that, yeah, you can replace your human resource, you can like make creativity, so on. Which future I see for the companies which think about the future and investments. Human resources is still in most cases one of the most valuable thing in the company. And if you just get rid of easily of your human resources, oh well, I mean, you cannot do machinery everywhere. And better if you automate as much as it possible, but keep your human resources for another type of the workloads. So, which means that we need just to make machines like automation with the AI working together with the human, and free human mindset from, let's say, generic tasks or things which easy to automate, to something what is more complex to do for the machinery. And I hope that it's gonna open the new gates in terms of the creativity, and actually might be interesting future. But yeah, keep an eye on it. Yeah, it's pretty much brief about AI, generative AI, my thoughts about that. I mean, there is a lot, actually. There's already a lot of information. I can like provide much more, but it's gonna be like big series of the talks, and yeah, makes no sense to do like one huge talk. Yeah, that's mainly it. Cheers, and till next time.